Welcome. We're very proud to be celebrating Arlington's Veterans Day ceremony here in Veterans Park for the 10th consecutive year. And most of you know that Veterans Day is normally observed on November 11th in remembrance of the armistice that ended World War I. But because the holiday falls on Saturday this year, we celebrate the official observance today on November 10th. Now, I know that there's a few good men and women here who know that today is also, and as Judge Carr pointed out, most importantly, the 242nd birthday of the United States Marine Corps. Happy birthday, Marines. Now, here's what we have in store for you today. Our intention is to give a sincere thank you to everyone who served our nation in the uniformed services. And then today, our keynote speaker, Colonel Christopher Talcott, and former Mayor Dr. Robert Clark will give special recognition to honor those who have served us during and in the aftermath of each of our armed conflicts. We'll also hear from Congressman Joe Barton today. I want to mention about the medical corps. We want to honor medics, hospital corpsmen, the doctors, the nurses, and other medical professionals who struggle valiantly against great odds to do what they can to limit the damage of war. We're so honored today to have with us Mayor Jeff Williams. He was elected in May 2015 after decades of public service in Arlington. He's a graduate of Texas Tech University with a degree in civil engineering. He was inducted into the university's Civil Engineering Academy for Engineering Excellence recently. More than 3 decades ago, Jeff and his wife Karen picked Arlington over other North Texas communities to raise their family, and we're so glad they did. Please welcome Arlington Mayor Jeff Williams.
Well, I want to start off today and say thank you to each one of our veterans and their families for your sacrifice, your commitment, and your dedication. You have made a tremendous difference and are continuing to. I know a lot of you out in the crowd, and you are continuing to give back to your community and make a difference, and we thank you for that. So on behalf of the City of Arlington, our City Council, and our entire community, thank you, thank you, thank you. I now have a proclamation to read. Whereas Veterans Day has its origins in the November 11th, 1918 armistice, which brought World War I to a conclusion, and whereas the Allied victory of World War I affirmed the strength of great nations acting together for high purposes, and whereas the people of the United States caused through their elected representatives the designation of November 11th as a federal legal holiday, which in 1954 became officially known thereafter as Veterans Day. And whereas Veterans Day continues to be celebrated and commemorated with solemn observances in honor of all Americans who have served their country in times of war and conflict. And whereas Veterans Day has become a significant part of our American heritage as we recognize the millions of our citizens whose military service has had a profound effect on history. And whereas the courage, the honor, sacrifice, and dedication which veterans of the United States Armed Forces have displayed in the cause of justice, freedom, and democracy are most worthy of recognition. Now therefore I, Jeff Williams, Mayor of the City of Arlington, Texas, and on behalf of the Arlington City Council, do hereby proclaim November 11th, 2017 as Veterans Day. Thank you.
We also want to thank the City Council and the Mayor for there's some new signs out here. This street, which is Spanish Trail, is also being designated as Veterans Way. I think there's some new signs up that just went up, I think, yesterday. And so we want to thank the City Council for honoring veterans in that way. Well, it's a great honor always to hear Congressman Joe Barton at these events. I think he's been here for most of them. Congressman Joe Barton was first elected to serve the 6th District of Texas in 1984. In 2004, he was selected by his colleagues to be the chairman of the House Committee on Energy and Commerce, which has jurisdiction over energy, public health, commerce, trade, and telecommunications. Barton currently serves as vice chairman and dean of the Texas delegation. He was born on September 15, 1949 in Waco, Texas. He holds a Bachelor of Science in Engineering degree, Industrial Engineering from Texas A&M University, and he has a Master of Science degree from Purdue University. He lives in Ennis, Texas. He has 4 children and 6 grandchildren. Please welcome Congressman Joe Barton.
Thank you, Clete. When I agreed to speak today, they were really excited that I could do it. They said just do it in 5 minutes or less, so I'm going to try to honor that. Today we're here not obviously to honor all the veterans, but they asked that we specifically honor the medical corps, the medics and the combat surgeons. Well, I never served in the military, but on June the 14th this year at 7 in the morning, I'm the manager of the Republican baseball team in Washington. We are getting ready for our annual baseball game against the Democrats, which was the next day, and a gunman armed with a semi-automatic rifle and an automatic pistol began to fire on my team at the baseball practice. And he hit 5 people, luckily none fatally. One of the ones that was hit the most severely was our number 3 leader in the Republican conference in the House, Steve Scalise from Louisiana. And Steve went down behind second base. There was a gunfight for approximately 8 minutes. That's a long time when you're flat on the ground out in the open hoping that you don't get hit. But in any event, at the end, when the security detail for Representative Scalise and the Alexandria police converged on the gunman, they finally shot him 3 times. And when the shooting stopped, a number of people ran out to check on Congressman Scalise, who had been hit in the hip and was bleeding profusely. One of those was a combat surgeon in the Gulf War, Congressman Winstrip of Michigan. He immediately put a pressure, had a towel, put a pressure pack on the wound. They ran back to one of the trucks, got a first aid kit. They put liquids into him and put a tourniquet on him, and a helicopter arrived and picked up Mr. Scalise and took him to the hospital, who had lost almost all of his blood. But they said if it hadn't have been for Congressman Winstrip knowing what to do, Steve Scalise would have died on the baseball field. Now, that's not a combat story, but the fact that we had a combat medic trained on our baseball team who knew what to do saved Congressman Scalise's life. And the medical corps does that every day. Somewhere in America, somewhere overseas, there are members of the medical corps that are going in harm's way, if it's out in the field in Afghanistan or Iraq, or in one of our VA hospitals or one of our surgical centers in Germany, wherever it is, they're saving some veterans or active duty military's life. So today we want to give special recognition to those in the medical corps. If we have any here in the audience, would you stand up so that we can honor you? We have anybody that's right over here? Right there? Honor them, right there. Now, real quickly, we're going to do a little quiz here before I sit down. How many veterans do we have right now in the United States? Somebody guess. 20 million. Pretty good. 18.5 million. That's of last year. So, how many of those are women? How many female veterans? This guy's pretty good. About 2 million are women, 2 million. How many Vietnam era veterans do we have? Anybody? A little under 7 million served in Vietnam. How many living World War II veterans do we have? About 700,000. 700,000. How many veterans do we have in Texas? Nobody? Y'all aren't guessing. You're supposed to guess. 1.5 million. Texas, California has 1.6, Texas 1.5, and Florida 1.4. How many veterans do we have that are over 65 years old? About 7 million. How many veterans do we have that are under 35 years old? About 7 million. So we have those that the Vietnam, Korea, World War II, and then we have the Desert Storm and all the war against terror. And between them, that's 14 million veterans. So now here's an important, for all these city councilmen and mayor and state rep, how many veterans voted last year? That's a big one. 14.4 million. 70% of the veterans voted. So they're a big group. There you go. Anyway, we're trying to do what we can in Washington. Last week we passed 7 bills on the House floor for veterans. We're trying to really improve the VA system. President Trump this year has fired over 1,000 VA employees for not doing their job. We have a hotline that we've established that is manned primarily by veterans. If you have a problem, you can call this hotline. We have reauthorized what we call the Choice Act. If a veteran lives more than 40 miles from a VA facility or has to wait more than 30 days to get an appointment, the veteran now has the choice of going to a private health care facility, and that will be reimbursed by the VA. So I'm proud to be a part of this. I am not myself a veteran, but I do honor the veterans. I appreciate your service. Thank you for helping to maintain our freedom, and let's hope that we can continue to be the freest nation in the world. God bless you.
And now to introduce our speaker, our keynote speaker today is Colonel Jim Quick. He's retired Colonel of the United States Air Force, and currently he's a distinguished university professor at UT Arlington and the University of Manchester in England. Dr. Quick.
I have Colonel Chris Talcott's full biography. You want to hear him, though, not me. So I will simply say he is a U.S. Army veteran who served in the Army for 24 plus years in leadership positions from lieutenant to colonel. He is a devoted soldier for life, husband, father, and son. Please welcome Colonel Talcott.
Well, it's an honor and privilege to be here today with you all. I'm grateful for our state and city leadership, all in attendance, specifically Congressman Barton and Mayor Williams and all the other dignitaries behind me. It's a great day to be in Texas. As I was looking at, if I had gone back to my hometown of Portland, Oregon to speak, it would be rainy and 45 degrees. If I'd gone back to West Point, where I was a professor, they had their first snow yesterday, and it's 34 and snowing. And then as I was driving here, I was looking at the weather across the nation. There are 44 cities that will have record lows today. So although not perfect, it is still a great day to be in Texas and in Texas. It's been a while since I've spoken, and so I was a bit apprehensive about coming here today for a couple reasons. One, wasn't sure my uniform was still going to fit, and so every year it seems to get tighter and tighter. And the other thing is just the magnitude of today, the importance of it, and was I worthy to talk? And so I reached out to one of my mentors and said, I'm going to be talking to the city of Arlington. Any suggestions? And he said, absolutely, Chris. The 3 B's: be brilliant, be brief, and then be gone. And he paused and he said, Chris, in your case, the last 2 B's: be brief and then be gone. And I know I'm standing between us now and great music and great food, and so I'll try to do that, but also honor today and what it stands for. And so as an Army guy, the first thing that we do every morning is have a first formation. And we bring our soldiers in and we do a roll call to make sure we know who's in attendance. And so I'm an Army guy, and so we're going to do that. I want to see who's in attendance today. And so by raise of hands, if you're an Army veteran, please raise your hand. Hooah. If you're a Navy veteran, please raise your hands. Awesome. Isn't that hoo-yah? If you're an Air Force veteran, please raise your hands. Awesome. Marine Corps. Where are Marine Corps? And then finally, Coast Guard. Anybody from the Coast Guard? So you heard a couple chants out there. Hoo-ah for the Army, hoorah for the Navy, and oorah for the Marine Corps. For the civilians that don't know what that means, those are words that can stand for anything. Yes, no, maybe, you're crazy. And you know you're a veteran because when somebody says it, you just know what they mean by it. And so thank you. If you're a Vietnam veteran, can you please stand for me right now? I just want to say I'm sorry and thank you. I'm sorry that our nation didn't realize the sacrifices that you made for us, and thank you for making our Army better from your services. So thank you very much. I just want to say I'm a product of great Vietnam veteran leaders. When I came in on active duty in 1990, my first field exercise in the Army was Desert Shield, Desert Storm, led by Vietnam veterans. And the lessons that we learned and the things that we changed in the Army to make it better, I'm a product of that. And I'm just so thankful for the Vietnam veterans here today. I know it's Veterans Day, but are there any first responders, civilian first responders in attendance today? I see a couple back here, and I think there's some around. I learned very long ago that my ability to deploy and go someplace different meant that I needed somebody to take care of my family and protect them here. And so I'm just so thankful for first responders and what you do every day to protect our families and our friends stateside. And so thank you and God bless you. Finally, family members of service members, if you could please stand. Any family members, moms, brothers, sisters, cousins, anybody like that? I just want to thank you all very much for your sacrifices too. It is not easy. I just have to ask my mom after my multiple deployments how she felt about me being deployed, my spouse being a single parent for a couple years, and just the sacrifices and the worries and the love and support. We couldn't do what we do without you, and so thank you, family members. And then finally, there may not be anybody here under this title, but are there any Gold Star family members that specifically lost someone in combat? Sir, thank you. Thank you. God bless you. All right. Yeah, no, thank you. Gosh, we can never say thank you enough, and God bless you. And today, although we celebrate veterans, it's hard for those of us who came back that didn't bring everybody back, and so it's difficult. And so I just thank you and God bless you. On Veterans Day, we honor every man and woman who's ever worn the uniform of our nation, those who selflessly secured America's promise throughout our history. That same history teaches us that security just doesn't happen. It demands effort, sacrifice, courage, and commitment. It requires generations of men and women willing to go distant lands, as the Korean War Memorial in Washington says, defend countries they never knew and a people who they've never met. Today we salute the service veterans across the nation, and we keep in our thoughts and prayers the fallen, the missing, and especially those veterans who right now are defending us in harm's way today. We also remember that honoring those who served isn't just about what we say here today. It's about how we honor our veterans every day of the year. It's remaining committed to supporting them and their families in every way that we possibly can. It's about serving them as well as they've served and continue to serve our nation today. We are currently in the longest war in our nation's history, 16 plus years. I have met countless veterans that are on their 6th, 7th, or 8th deployment. We are continuing to ask a lot of the less than 1% to protect the 99%. My only charge today to all veterans here is that we tell our story. We tell their stories for what those that did not return, and ensure that our fellow Americans know how special they are, how thankful we are for their sacrifice. For the veterans who are currently deployed, they are truly servants to our nation and our Constitution, and do not choose when and where they will go. They just do it when our national civilian elected leadership asks them to. General Kelly, the current chief of staff of our administration, was recently quoted as saying that there's tens of thousands of American kids mostly doing their nation's bidding all around the world. They don't have to be in uniform. These young people today, they don't do it for any other reason than their sense of selfless devotion to this great nation. Not for any other reason than they love this country. Today we honor all veterans of the armed forces, and with added special recognition for our combat medics, medevac pilots and crews, hospital corpsmen, and medical nursing and psychological caregivers. Didn't get to hear my whole bio, but I'm not one of them. I was an artilleryman. And although I've slept in a number of Holiday Inns in my life, and I even currently work for a veteran nonprofit called the Boot Campaign that dedicates itself to providing medical support for veterans with PTSD, traumatic brain injury, addiction, sleep, and chronic pain challenges, I'm still not good enough to say that I could fill any of their shoes. So if you bear with me, I've been blessed to be in their presence, seen firsthand what they do, and would like to share some short stories from their viewpoint in service, veterans who I am blessed to work with today. I do not think it's a coincidence that those who give special recognition today fall into the same category as our latest Medal of Honor recipient, Army Medic James McLaughlin. Sergeant McLaughlin was assigned to 5th Special Forces Group and is credited with saving the lives of 10 members of his platoon nearly 50 years ago in the Battle of New Yon Hill in Vietnam. So the first person I want to talk about that I work with is Colonel Jonathan Jaffin. He's a retired Army surgeon. He commanded Walter Reed in the early 2000s at the start of our wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. And he said that medical professional community has always been at the forefront of innovation through a range of wars that our country has participated in. Each war has brought specific advances to the practice of civilian military medicine. He went as far back as World War I, stating that the understanding of shell shock, we now call it PTSD, started. Better treatment of fractures. Fractures were causing about 50% of the fatalities. By the end of World War I, we were down to 15%. And then blood transfusion techniques were improved. World War II, we started getting after it with antibiotics, better evacuation procedures and planning, better management of tropical diseases like malaria, better treatment of wounds. Again, sustained and improved methods to treat shock. Korea War, first use of helicopter evacuation, better artery repairs, and improved blood transfusion techniques again. Vietnam, regional trauma centers, physician assistance, understanding treatment of acute respiratory disease following injury, treatment of renal failure following injury, recognition, again, of PTSD. It's a trend. Finally, in today's war and our efforts on OEF, the culmination of 75 years of advancement is marked with large increases of case fatality rates being decreased, massive transfusion protocols, improved tourniquets. We hadn't really improved our tourniquets for about 100 years, and anybody in combat knows that when somebody gets hit, you've got to stop the bleeding. And now every soldier has this tourniquet to take care of their battle buddy. We also have armor and improved treatments with amputee care. As I switch gears, I work with a young lady named Cassie Canton. She served 24 years in the Army as a medic and then a licensed practical nurse. And I asked her, what should I talk about today to really recognize our nurses. She said that after returning from my deployment in Iraq, it was hard for me to actually acknowledge to anyone that I had been there. I never wanted to talk about the things that we had done or seen. I came down on orders to relocate to Fort Sam Houston upon my return from a tour in Iraq, and I dreaded having to relocate, especially to a place where I would be constantly reminded that this war was still ongoing, and so many injured military members and their families would be a constant reminder of the things I had seen. I was suffering from survivor's remorse, and I didn't know how I'd be able to handle this. I got to know many of the wounded warriors and shared with them the fact that I'd been deployed and was assigned to the 21st Combat Support Hospital. Some of them have actually been treated at our facility in Iraq before and being sent to San Antonio for further treatment. I was happy to see that we did help to get them home and be with their families. I spent many nights thanking God for what he had done. During a conversation with the wounded warrior, I was asked why I didn't wear my combat patch. I shared with him that I didn't want to be reminded of Iraq, and I didn't want other people to know that I had been there. In my mind, you were judged, or people treated you like you were somehow mentally unstable if you had a combat patch. He asked me if I was proud of what I had done while I was deployed. I told him that I was very proud. And he was able to, after he was able to control his laughter, he told me that I should wear my patch with pride. You made a difference, now show it. I bet you these soldiers that you are taking care of will look at you differently. She said he was right. While helping others heal, I started to heal myself. Two more stories. Christina Hess served as also as licensed practical nurse from 2006 to 2013 in the Army. She is currently an Army wife and mother of two boys and attending college to pursue her MBA at UT Austin. She said, there's no way to summarize the things that I experienced in these 7.5 years. Being an Army nurse can strip you of your faith in humanity one day and then restore your faith stronger than ever before the next. I witnessed soldiers with greater than 50% of their bodies severely burned, scream in pain as their wounds were cleaned. I watched loved ones walk in a room, look at them, and turn around and leave, never to return. But I also watched as mothers and fathers and wives and husbands sat next to their loved ones for months, showing constant love and support. I even watched as a wife held her dying husband's hand. I had never seen love like that before, and it still moves me to tears when I think about it today. I had the privilege of working with a Special Forces soldier who had been thrown from a vehicle after an explosion, and then he was shot several times. We knew that he would live, but the doctors did not think he would ever walk again. After several months of physical therapy, while still an inpatient due to multiple surgeries, infections, and complications, I watched this young man take his first steps. First with a walker, and then later, and she put in parentheses, without permission, walking across the room without assistance. While I panicked when I realized what he was doing, we all embraced each other with joy because we knew that he was going to be just fine. Like I said, there's no way to summarize or wholly describe what being an Army nurse is, except to say that it was one of the greatest honors of my life. And then finally, Sarah Lucas, U.S. Army Staff Sergeant, retired, served 18 months in the Army Reserves and 16 years of active duty as a combat medic, hospital medic, instructor, and flight medic for a UH-60 Black Hawk helicopter, and she is currently married to an active duty Marine. She said one incident that stands out amongst all the others is the compassion that exudes from our ICU medical staff during the early years of the wars in both Iraq and Afghanistan, when too many service members were coming to Naval Medical Center Bethesda daily for treatment with injuries. She said our ICU was extremely crowded with so many injured, along with family members trying to be there for them. A Marine who was severely injured and lost both his legs and was also fighting a terrible infection was not expected to live through the night. The unit had planned to award him his Purple Heart that evening, and his wife decided that it would also be appropriate for friends and families to say their goodbyes. Then there was at least 16 family members present and more coming, and the rule stipulated that only 2 family members could be present in the ICU at any given time. The nurses decided that the rules were guidelines and that this was something that needed to be broken and happen. So space was made, rearranging the area of the ICU that all could be near him to be warded his Purple Heart. As the staff stood back and watched, everyone having tears in their eyes, each person reached his bed to say their goodbyes while his wife held his hand. These short conversations are just a glimpse in the lives of our wonderful military medical personnel that we honor today. Their personal stories highlight what they do best. They figure out how to care for, heal, and provide for all our injured armed forces personnel. And sometimes regulations need to be broken, and they just do that to make it happen. As I conclude my remarks today, those of us who live today remember those who do not. It's just so hard to separate, as Cassie said, survivor's guilt with our service and deployment in faraway lands. Those who know freedom remember today those who gave up life for freedom. Our challenges for those of us who made it back is to honor those who did not by living with purpose, conviction, and a sincere desire to continue to serve our nation and to be the best that we can be, whether it's an employee, a father, mother, son, daughter, just being better. We need to invest in our children and grandchildren who grow up way too fast and be the next leaders of our nation. Freedom isn't free, and they need to know that. Special folks called veterans ensure that we have the ability to live the way we do today. I conclude by paraphrasing a quote from a monument in our nation's capital. Not for fame or reward, not for place or for rank, not lured by ambition or goaded by necessity, but in simple obedience to duty as they understood it. These veterans in attendance before you today suffered, sacrificed, and dared all for our freedoms today. God bless our veterans and families. God bless the great state of Texas, and God bless the United States of America. Thank you.
Thank you, Colonel Talcott. And I'm going to ask you, if you would, along with Congressman Barton and our State Senator Connie Burton and Mayor Williams, if they would come up here and help us give the combat medical people, the medical corps individuals, and I'm going to ask our elected officials to be here by these medallions. And we have the names of some people who've registered with us, and we want to honor you by giving you a token of our appreciation. So when I call your name out, if you would come up here and receive one of these medallions and also one of the mugs here. I'm going to call out the names one at a time. I'll begin with Josh Douglas. He is a sergeant in the United States Army, served from 2004 to 2017. He was a medic and served in the Iraq War, Operation Iraqi Freedom, Operation Enduring Freedom. Second class Richard Hendley, served in the United States Navy from May 67 to May 69. Served in Vietnam. Next, we want to honor Jack Higgins. He died on August 23rd of this year. I don't know if there's a family member here. He served in the United States Air Corps, his first lieutenant, 1943-1945, and his military occupational specialty was medevac. Next up is Dr. John Holmberg. He is a lieutenant colonel in the United States Army. He was a radiologist and flight surgeon, medical officer in the United States Army in Europe. Next up is First Lieutenant Doak Kiblinger. Served in the United States Army in Vietnam. Next up is Santiago Salinas, Hospital Corpsman 3rd Class, United States Army, served from 1966 to 1970. He's a Navy corpsman and served in Vietnam. Next is Chaplain Rich Stoglin, served in the United States Army and the United States Marine Corps, active duty 1985 to 2013. Next, I want to call up Dr. Holmberg again because his wife, Carolyn Wiktorowski, couldn't be here, but she served in the United States Army. She was a captain in the Medical Surgical Nurse Corps. Next would be Sergeant Royce Dalton, served 2003 and to 2009, Army Medical Corps.
Mr. Greta is the captain, military medical administrator, medevac support for 71st Battalion, Republic of Vietnam Army.
And finally, Eric Ogle, combat medic, 21 years in the Army and the Texas Army National Guard.